Tractate Bava Batra, page 164. I'd like to start with the great Chafetz Chaim, the great rabbi that teaches so many halachot, code of ethics, behavior toward each other. Chafetz Chaim asked a question. He was a rabbi in Radin, one of those Eastern European community. And the question was asked, what do you do if they blame you for something you are really not guilty of, and people don't believe what you said, as long as you don't bring a proof of someone who really should be blamed for? Do you allow to do it? Do you allow to speak an evil gossip, lashon hara? How you differentiate between real lashon hara and avak lashon hara? Avak lashon hara meaning something that resonates, a evil gossip. So we're going to deal with that later, but first we'll continue with the subject of yesterday, which is the recognition of forgery. We talk about documentation, understanding the way that the system works in those days, a discussion over erased files or erased line, and different documentation that have rewritten when and where and how you recognize or disrecognize as a valid document. I would like to start with a general statement that that applies not only here but in many other places. The statement is from the great Rashbam. He, in Hilchot Milveh Veloveh, chapter 27, said, and I just reading from the translation of a Quran, a document is not valid if its text is written on paper that never had written erased, but the witnesses are signed over an erasure. It's because there is a concern that the holder of the document may then erase the original text of the document and substitute the text more to his advantage. So here we have this type of circumstance that people use or abuse the system, especially when it's come to forgery. First statement is on page 163, very bottom of the page, 163b. Gufa amarav shtar rabah hu ve'idav alamcha kasher. You have a document and you recognize that it was erased and rewritten, and you have also the signatures of those witnesses that basically sign, it's written and signed on the text that is already erased. So we said even it's not lechatchila the way it should be, but in a hindsight, by force of circumstance, it's okay, it is valid. 164, ואם תאמר מוחק וחוזר ומוחק. Since we talk about forgery, it is a possibility that a person writes, then erases, and then rewrites. So the problem with this type of forgery said that those witnesses basically affirm something that it's a forgery, and therefore, if you have a document that have a potential for forgery, we said it's invalid. So the Gemarrah explained, אינו דומה נמחק פעם אחת לנמחק שתי פעמים. You cannot compare a document that erased only once to a document that erased twice, because, as the Rashbam explained, we can recognize it. You look deeper, Tosfot said, and you recognize the difference. So the Gemarrah asks, maybe he take the document initially, after the entire original document, including signatures, has been erased, but before the second one is written, throw some ink on the place where the witnesses are to sign under the text in a second document, and erase when he again re-erase the text, and therefore if it's written, if it was such a level of forgery, even it was erased twice, you recognize that it's a forgery. So obviously Rabbeinu Gershom, as well as the Meiri, have a big discussion how you really recognize the difference between if it's erased once, erased twice, and how you can make a halachic differentiation. But anyway, the Gemara said, Amar Abaye, Kasava Rav en ha'edim chotmim al hamchak elem ken nimchak bifneihem. The witnesses can give us a testimony only they are, in a way, can sign the document written over an erasure unless the paper was erased in the present, which means unless they saw the paper after its old text has been erased before the new text was written. So, Meitivei, hu al haniyar veidav al hamchak kasher. So the question is, you have a document in which its text is on part of the paper that has never had written erase, and the signatures of its witnesses are on an erasure, so they said it's valid. So so we should be concerned that he can erase the text and he should write whatever he wishes to. So you have both he and its witnesses on an erasure. So because Rav maintained that such a document is valid, it is easily forgeable, and clearly forgeable. So he said, the Chativ Hachi, that the witnesses writes as follows: Anachna, we, Sahadi, our witnesses, Chatmana al Mehaka, we sign on the erased document, Ushtara Katav al Niyara. And the document text was written on a part of the paper that they never had written erase. So the Gemara explained and said, the Chativ Haicha, where they write it, Imil Tachat, if under the signatures, Gaizley, unfortunately people does forgery, he can cut that line and then he can forge it. If it's above the signatures, Machikle, he can erase it together with the other part of the document. The Chatvei, you have to say, the Chatvei ben Sahada la Sahada. It's between the signatures. So, the owner of this document cannot erase or cut their testimony. So, Yache Maseifa. Let's see the last clause in the Braita. Hu al hamachak veidav al haniyar pasul. So here, if a document in which its text is in erasure and the signatures of its witnesses are on a part of the paper that had never written erase, so we said what? We said it's not valid. Amai pasul? Why in such a document is not valid? We, the witnesses, signed a paper that never had written erase, but the document text was written on an erasure. So the Gemara said, Hashtanami mochek vechozer u'mochek. Here you have the same story. Erase and do it again. What we just said, you cannot compare between a text that was erased once to the text that erased twice. So why the adut, the witnesses, is invalid when it's come to a witnesses over erased text? So Hanemila, the Gemara said that we differentiate between erase one to twice. When you have the signature when on an erasure, which means the appearance of the erasure can be compared to the appearance of a double erasure. אבל היכא דלא חתים מסעדה המחקה אלא ניירה, לא ידיע. When it's only on a paper, so the text is not erased, so you really do not differentiate between the two. So when he is on the erasure part and the witness is on a paper, you cannot avoid a forgery. So here we have the Rashbam. ומשנה אני מלאחד ולא חת מסעדה על המחאה, כיוון שיש שני מחקים בשטר אחד זה יכול להכיר מינים חק יותר בחברו. So he basically juxtaposed, he can recognize what is a forgery and what is not. So in גיליוני הש"ס, I think it's Rabbi Akiva Iger, based on the Torah, they said in Bereshit Lamed Zayin, in Parshat Vayeshev. So the story when they put Joseph in the pit, the Torah said, Vayikchu et ktonit Yosef, Vayishchetu s'ir ezim. They took the tunic, the shirt that Joseph wore, and they combined it with a dead animal. ופירש Rashi said there, s'ir ezim damo dome לשל אדם, that the blood looks like a human, even it's come from the animal, from a lamb. So the Chavot Yair, in one of the responsa in Siman Lamed, he brings the Gemarrah in Gittin, 57b. So over there the Gemarrah tells us a terrible story, getting close to Tisha B'Av, the story of Nebuzaradan. Nebuzaradan, he took the blood of Zechariah, the prophet Zechariah, and he put there Dam Zvachim. So over there they explain when is Sair Levad alone, so it really looks like a blood of human. But here, when they are both, so the one who sees the difference between the two. But the Gilonei Shas in Gittin 57b explain here from our Gemarrah that we said that we don't have a raya, we don't have a proof if it was erased one time or erased twice. So he said, if it was 2 times, we recognize. But you see, in general, when you juxtapose document, which one it was only 1 time, and which one there are more than 1 time. Anyway, that's a beautiful Gilonei Shas. V'leite megilta acharite v'limchok. So the rabbinic court can bring another parchment, write something on it, and erase it. So then we know the difference. You cannot compare the erasure of one scroll to another, because if it's a heavy duty, if it's a gas ave, you don't recognize the same as the thin one. So how about if you take you verify the signatures of the witness on the document in court, after which they may safely be erased. So that's what he said. You cannot compare that one was erased that day, the same day, that one is more than a day after it was written. So he said, Velishahaya, so you can retain the document for extra day. So we are concerned with the possibility that the court make a mistake, because you have such a long procedure and it's complicated procedure. So therefore, the whole purpose is in order to show the document is valid. So it will be a chance that a particular court will not apply them properly, and that court will end up ratifying a document that was not valid. To be concerned about those bedin that unfortunately making mistakes. Anyway, the idea here is they said that if it was a document, if it was a shtar, that he and his witnesses have written on the erased document that it's valid, as long as there's no space between the signatures, in order to write Achnat Sadeh. Also, if it's written on a piece of paper, and they have witnesses for that, so it's valid, as long so the witnesses said clearly between the lines, אנחנו סעד חתמנה על מחקה ושרת הכתב על ניירה. Anyway, Rabbi Hanina ben Gamliel אומר מקושר. Rabbi Hanina ben Gamliel said that a tied document that was witnesses wrote the signatures inside of it is valid. Why? Because one transforms it into an ordinary document by uniting them. So it said, Yeshiv Rabbi לדברי Rabbi Hanina ben Gamliel. So Rabbi Nasi raised an objection to the statement that Rabbi Hanina ben Gamliel made. 164b. ועלון דומה זמנו של זה לזמנו של זה. The time of the tie document is different. Why? Because in a regular shtar pashut, a regular document, they go by minyan shtarot, right? Remember we talked about Alexander and when they started minyan shtarot. Anyway, they said if that king reigned malach shana, monim lo shana, shtayim monim lo shtayim. Versus in a tie shtar, the tie document, mekushar malach shana, monim lo shtayim, shtayim monim lo shalosh. They said the third year of the so-and-so king. וזמין דיזיף מיני זוזי מקושר, במקושר, which means he borrow in a tie document money, and he writes the time in addition to the year. That's the way they do it in a tie document. ומתרמה לזוז בינו ובינו ופרלה. All of a sudden, during the time, he have money, so he pay it back. ואמר לי, הב לי שטרי, give me back the document. ואמר לי, הרכס לי, I lost it. וכתב לי תברה, so he is now write for him a receipt for the debtor as a protection against the second collection. וכימתי זימנה משב לפשוט, ואמר לי, הנאשת די עזבת מיני. So now he have open the tie and make it a regular document. And he said, this is the one that you borrow this money from me, because you see this is attached to this promissory note, and the receipt you have in your possession is for the previous debt, and its date precedes the date of my document. So Gemarrah said, "Kasavar en kotvim shovar." You hold that you do not write a receipt in such a cases. So he will not pay the debt until the lender tear off the promissory note or the document. So therefore you not have a concern in the tie document that something like that happened. It was a tie document that bought before the rabbi. ואמר רבי, שטר מאוחר זה. ואמר לו, זונין לרבי, כך מנהגה שלמה זו, מלך שנה מונים לו 2, 2 מונים לו 3. בתר לשמה, מזונין צברה. So he accepted only after he heard it from Zonin, because that was the notion that, and only then he challenged Rabbi Chaim ben Gamliel. It was a document that was written in year and so, in Ploni Arkan. It was the title of a ruler. So Rashbam said that it wasn't clear what year. Again, that's the year that they started Minyan Shtarot. אמר רבי חייני בדק מתי עמד ארקן בארקנותי. So the Rashbam explained, you have to check when is that king start his reigning, because it was the first year of that king. So from that year and onward, the lender can collect any lien estate from his customers. Now, the truth is, Tosfot here hold ניר לרידה ארקן לאו היינו מלך, אלא ממונה שמסירים אותו ממשרתו לאחר שנה. וממונה עולמית, so it's like a rotation job in a high office. It's not really a king. But Rabbi Weisblum have here מהלך. What exactly, how basically when you take away a job like a king from someone and you give it back, how exactly you do it? Anyway, ודילמה דריך מלכותי, אמר רבי שם כך מנגש לומר, so that's the Greek methodology, that's the Greek way of code of behavior. שנה ראשונה קוראים לו ארקן, שנה שנייה קוראים לו דיגון. First year, they call him Arkan. The second year, Digon is like 2 in Greek. That's the way the Rashbam explained. As we said, תוספות here, אבל ירקן היינו מלך שלא דרך שיעבירו מלכותו. It's very unlikely in entire world history how many times you hear that they took a king from his job and then they put him back. It's very unlikely. But as we said, if you want to read more, Rabbi Weisblum responds on that. ודילמה אבורי עברו והדר הוקמו. So may you say that the people deposed the ruler and then reinstated him, and the document was written in the first year of the second reign. So they said, אמר רבי ירמיה, ההוא ארחן דיגון קראו לי. So Rabbi Yirmiyah said that in that case they refer to him with the title Arkan Digon, which is a combination of the two. Now the truth is, the continuation of the sugya is from the Gemarrah in Nazir, which we studied in the past. Just an abbreviation. General Nazirut, general time that the person accepts upon himself Nazirut is 30 days. After the 30 days, if you remember, we studied in Tractate Nazir, page 5, you see it's also in the Rambam, Ilchot Nazirut, chapter 3. So after the 30 day, a person can shave and bring his offering. So a person basically, the Gemarrah in Nazir, page 16 said that a person can accept Nazirut one after the other. Nazir, Sumchus Amar Heina Achat, which means he accepted upon himself 30 days. Digon, if he said the word Digon is explained, is a double too, Shtaim, which is 60 days of Nazirut. Trigon Shalosh. Tetrigon 4. Pentigon 5. תנו רבנן, בית עגול, דיגון, טריגון, פנטיגון, אינו מטמא בנגעים, טטריגון מטמא בנגעים. So here we talk about the law of purity. In order to have the proper idea of health or ritual impurity, you have to have this category as a status of a house. מנן המילת, תנו רבנן, למעלה אומר קיר, קירות, 2. למטה אומר קיר, קירות, 2, הרי כאן 4. Which means only the owner is the one who contaminated with ritual impurity. הוא מקושר דעת לקמא דרבי. אמר רבי אין זמן בזה. So this is not it doesn't have a clear statement. אמר לו רבי שמעון בר רבי לרבי, שמא בן קיש כשלרב מובלע. Maybe in between the tight document they have a secret. Palga v'chazrei. Rabbi tore the tighten part and showed the proper time. Hadar chaza beRabbi bevishut. So Rabbi looked at his son Rabbi Shimon in anger, because he thought that he's the one who wrote this document. Because he hold, in general, Rabbi hold that any shtar mekushar, any type of documentation, that you need to have this type of specialty, since most of the people are not so erudite, and there's a few, the Rashbam said, of mistakes. That's the reason. But anyway, Amar le, Rabbi Shimon said to Rabbi, Lava Rabbi Yehuda Chayata kadvei. So he said, I didn't do it, Rabbi Yehuda Chayata wrote it. Amar le, klach milashon hara hazeh. You can say, I didn't do it. But by saying so and so, you're basically speaking לשון הרע. בישלמה תעמיקה לשון הרע. אלא אחא... לא, I skip here. זימין הווה יקייתיב קמי. One time Rabbi Shimon said before Rabbi, וקפסיק סיגדרה בספר תהילים. So they studied together, and they complete study, Rabbi Gershom said, the complete reciting or study, one of the Sidra, one of the long chapter of Tehillim. like as you know that it's divided by the days, by the weeks. So one of those. אמר לו, so Rabbi said, אמר רבי, כמה מיושר כתב זה? אמר לבן הכתבתי, יהודה חיית הכתבי. אמר לקלח מלשון הרע. The same story. He gave a reference to someone else in the way I didn't ask you. By saying that, it's basically evil gossip. בשלה מה אתה מיקה לשון הרע? אלא חמה לשון הרע איקה. Why you say לשון הרע when it said that somebody else wrote it? משום דרב דימי, ניתן לרב דימי אחור דרב ספרו, למה לספר אדם בטובתו של רב ראש, מתוך טובתו בעל דרעתו. So here give a very good advice. It says, when you're praising someone, you should be careful. Because guess what happened? When you overpraise or you said too much, people start thinking. And especially when they start investigating, or if a person is too garrulous, is too talkative, he start also mentioning false thing that the person does in error. So therefore you have to be careful not to overdo it or over exaggerate. The Chafetz Chaim in one of his books is called Be'er Maim Chaim. You see it also here the Maharsha. He explained that if they suspected someone over something and he said it's not me, but people don't believe him, so what they do, he needs to give them the person whom he believes he's the one who guilty. But the question is, Chafetz Chaim have a big suffix, a big quandary, a big predicament, if he referred to someone else, because otherwise nobody believes him, if that's okay or not. It's like when we send Shabbat, he mentions Charo Rabbe Meod Al Pi Pa'olo, one of the songs we send Shabbat. It's applied to someone who's taking responsibility over other people, which is, if you see that is a hatred and suspicion over someone, and you just chip in and said, okay, I did it, I'm responsible even you are not, that's anyway. So here he tried to say that it's a person should be careful when you praise someone. Sometimes you may exaggerate, and then it can create problems. The Shara Tshuva have a big write-up how far you go with that. When you're allowed to say, how much you're allowed to say. אמר רב אמרה למרב שלוש עבירות אין אדם ניצל מהם כל יום ערעור עבירה ועיון תפילה ולשון הרע. There are 3 mistakes that the person will not save in a daily basis, which is, one is הרהור עבירה, which means, unfortunately, sinful thoughts, ועיון תפילה. So Rashbam said that the person thinks that the God is going to give me back a reward immediately because I make such a prayer. Many challenged that, the Ramban, Rashbam and others said, what? But anyway, in Lashon Hara, it's obviously it's a malicious speech, gossip. So Lashon Hara sar kadatach. You mean to say that the person cannot go through the day without uttering a malicious speech? Page 165, Ela avak lashon hara. Avak lashon hara meaning a hint, words that bear trace to a malicious speech. So like he says, it's always fire and so out. But it's indirectly, it's a big response in Shari Tshuva, how far you go with that. Amar Rav Yudah, Amar Rav, Rov begazel u'miut barot v'akol b'lashon hara. He make a general statement. He says, majority of the people succumb to sin with regard to robbery, and minority of the people succumb to sin with the sexual matter, and everyone succumbs to sin with regard to malicious speech. B'lashon hara sar kadatach. You mean to say that people really speak malicious speech, lashon hara? So the Gemara answers, and he said, Ela avak lashon hara. Avak lashon hara meaning a hint of a malicious speech. Because sometimes if you just said it, indirectly you imply something that can have consequences. But that's what Rashbam said. Balet diderato. You said something and you meant well, but you can basically do more harm. Obviously you have here a huge difference between the Tosfot and many others. So the idea is, in short, the people succumb to iyun tefillah, to understand the prayer, or they're too much and it's gava, or it's not at all just mumbling words like some type of lip service, and it's meaningless. So that's what Shlomo HaMelech said when he finished the Beit HaMikdash. He said, "V'yu dvarai ele," and this word that I utters, accepted before the Creator, ki'ilu itchananti. So what does that mean? So even the person does the tefillah, he needs to beg, he needs to ask that God will follow up and go in midat chesed and accept it. And obviously there is so much to discuss how a person should be careful when you say something and you meant to praise, and it can come out the other way around. So first I would like to conclude with Rambam. Rambam in L'chot Deot said, לעולם לספר אדם בטובתו של חברו. A person should be careful never to speak a praise of others. In a sense, if one praises another person in the presence of that person's enemies, it's considered a hint of a malicious speech, because he thereby indirectly prompts the enemies to speak disparagingly of that person. So it is concerning this matter that King Solomon said in Proverbs 27, "He will bless his friend with a loud voice, raising early in the morning, it shall be counted a curse to him." Because as a result of this praise, the friend experiences negative effects. But is a book called Olelot Ephraim in Ma'amar Reish Aleph. So he bring the great book called Toldot Yaakov Yosef in Parshat Kittiseh, that he bring a remez, he bring implication. We have the famous story of Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf. And when it's come to Chet HaEgel, it's Ayin, Gimel, and Lamed. Ayin is Arayot, immoral relation. Gimel, it's Gezel, robbery. And Lamed is Lashon Hara. So he bring what the famous statement of our sages, they said, "En lecha kol dor vador," it's not such a thing for every future generation, she'eino notel mechet'o shel egel, that does not partake from the sin of egel. So what is egel? We said in these three things is like an abbreviation that is ramuz, that is indirectly saying in Rashi Tevot shel egel, egel arayot, Gezel, and Lashon Hara.